Hello, everyone. I hope you guys had the day you intended to have today. Thank you so much for trusting me with your energy. I want to introduce this second Ancestor Veneration video. This one is going to be very different in that it does not include any tips for practitioners in particular. It's more inclusive to an entire community, including children. So if you have watched the last video, there's going to be some of the same information in there, but I'm going to go more in depth about the actual altar itself and not necessarily what the veneration process looks like if you plan on practicing or connecting to spirit in a quote unquote magical way. The first thing we're going to cover is what ancestor veneration actually is and why it's important, particularly from the Black and Indigenous community. The reason that I want to highlight that is because that's my experience. My experience as a Black woman is that this is what I've come across in my own practice. It's not to say that other people cannot take from this what they take, but it is to say that I'd be lying if I told you that I knew this type of information from any other cultural perspective. We're going to go over how you can begin to connect, tools and offerings that can be used to erect the altar and what they're for, general questions, tips and insight. So first, what is ancestor veneration? What does it mean? Who is it for? And the answer to a few other questions. An ancestor is a person who preceded you in your direct lineage and is now deceased. For the purposes of erecting this type of altar, we're focusing on our direct lineage. That does not mean that there are not other cultures or religions that practice this differently. Again, this is from the way I practice, what I practice, which is non-religiously affiliated. No longer living, though. Do not put pictures of live people on your altar. They are not your ancestors. They're still here. They're your family. That includes parents, grandparents, great-grandparents, aunts, uncles, cousins, etc. If the person is younger than you in age, if they're no longer living, they're considered an ancestor because they're on the other side. Again, this is from my perspective. I feel that the spirit is older than the flesh. So when that spirit transitions, when that soul transitions, then they are considered an ancestor. I personally, however, do not call on the ancestors that are younger than me to ask them for anything, to ask them to help me with anything. But I do ask that if there is something that they feel the need to help me with, or that they feel the need to assist with, that they feel free to do so. I want to note that not all ancestors are honorable. So let's make sure that we're clear on who we're calling in when we call in. And some practices dictate that all dead are not made ancestors unless there's a ritual. For me, this is not that, because the nature of African people and our being stolen from where we were and being brought here and having our cultures and our practices taken from us, it's not possible. With this idea, to me, that would mean that anyone who is a descendant of an enslaved person or a stolen person doesn't have any ancestors beyond us being able to have those rituals. So if you are in a practice, or you're hearing from people who practice particular religions that there are rituals that need to happen in order to give the dead the rights to ancestry, that doesn't mean that they're wrong. Just be clear on what it is that you're trying to accomplish. When it comes to, New Orleans voodoo and hoodoo practices, you just have to talk to your ancestors. That just is what it is, because that is what the culture allows for. But don't beat yourself up if you're not sure, if you're hearing one thing or another. You can connect with your ancestors. You do not need anybody's permission to do that. That's another thing. So if anybody makes you feel like you have to go through a priest or a priestess, or you have to talk to somebody in particular, if you are not subscribing to that religion, no, you do not. You can talk to your ancestors whenever you feel like it. There's nobody who can stop you from talking to your ancestors. And even in some of these religions, the people who are telling you that, make sure that you get a second opinion. Veneration is reverence, regarding or treating with deep respect. I want to focus on this for a second, the same way I did in the last video, because reverence and respect is in all aspects. It doesn't mean that when you go to your altar, you are asking for whatever it is that you're asking for, and then you're moving in wickedness and deceit when you're walking around the world. You need to be treating them with deep respect by also treating yourself with deep respect and doing the things that you know are honorable to the honorable ancestors that you're working with. That is how you maintain the elevation of your lineage. Why it's important. This is by no means an exhaustive list. These are just some things that are helpful. Spiritual benefits, elevation, healing, connecting to your actual family in the flesh, stronger manifestation powers, emotional benefits, or have emotional healing, safety and security, generational healing, and removal of stress, knowing that you're going to be taken care of and that somebody is guiding you and that everything is happening in your best interest is a lot easier when you're connected to your ancestors, so you know where that actual guidance is coming from. And then the mental benefits, alignment, stronger discernment, less obstacles, and making more effective choices. When you're thinking about the things that you ask for, when you're thinking about the things that you want to do, and you find yourself saying, oh, I don't know what to do. I don't know where to turn. I don't know what my thought process should be. Is this the right answer? Dealing with your ancestors when you have those types of confusing moments, or those moments where you're not sure which way to turn, is going to be your best practice, because people can only give you advice from their own lens. Even if it's somebody who's a trusted practitioner, even if it's somebody who's a trusted spiritualist, we are all giving information based off of our spiritual understanding and lens. The people that have the best answers for you are the ones who have transitioned to the other side and can help you do what you're doing now. Some other reasons: benefits for children, deeper understanding of self, better understanding of their own energy, respect, and responsibility. Their connection to the spirit world, the earlier they start, the easier it is to build these things, the easier it is to build this sense of you're doing something for someone outside of yourself, in a sense that it's bigger than you. You're doing things to elevate your ancestors, understanding the importance of that connection, and then also being able to pass that connection on to their own children, should they have children, to their own nieces or nephews, should they have siblings who have children. And you put yourself in the position to position your child for a spiritual connection as they get older. Sometimes they will develop other gifts. Sometimes they will develop different understandings. And when we as the adults in the flesh are not able to help them, their connection to their ancestors will help guide them through some of those things that might be a little bit difficult for us to understand. The benefits for those who identify as women: healing your womb space, healing your toxic femininity, your wounded femininity, putting you in tune to yin and yang is for both. So in this little brown area, it's like this is both for everyone, but tuning into your yin and yang, increasing self-love, increasing self-worthiness, nurturing your inner child, picking better partners, healing your children as you heal. For benefits for men, better management and understanding of your sexual energy, and healing wounded toxic masculinity. Talking to your ancestors about the things that you identify need to heal, and asking them to identify things that you may not be aware of, is going to be a major key to any level of ascension, whatever it is that you want to do, magical or mundane. If you want to be the best, economic, whatever you do in that field, that's what you want to do. If you want to be the best real estate person, if you want to be the best, whatever it is, the best way to do that is to connect with the spirits that are guiding you through that. How can I begin to connect? Prayer. Say your favorite protection prayer. Elevation, whatever you like. It doesn't have to be of religious origin. You can just set the intention. I give light to my ancestors. I give light to my benevolent and honorable ancestors. I give light. I elevate you. I pray for your protection. You can just speak what it is that you are intending. But if you do have a prayer or some type of process that resonates with you, then you can do that as well. Talking, just talk. Say good morning, say good night. Share things, talk out loud. When you're walking through the supermarket, put a headphone in, pretend you're talking to somebody, but be in conversation, even when you feel like you're not hearing anything back. It also helps to show that you have faith that you're being heard. Sometimes the faith that we're not being heard gives us a sense of fear. It gives us a sense of loneliness, and that vibration is going to keep you from connecting. Allow yourself to believe and know that you are being heard, even when you don't think you are. And then give thanks no matter what, even when you feel like you don't know whether or not it was them, even when you feel like you're not sure whether or not they heard you, always give thanks. When it comes to offerings, food, water, liquor, tobacco, whatever it is that you feel like you like to offer, What I will say is if you have a high vibrational ancestor who you want to venerate, but you know that they had a vice that was the reason for their death. Let's say they smoke cigarettes and then they transition from lung cancer. Do not give them cigarettes. That's not something that's going to keep them in a high vibrational space, because that was something that took them out. Same thing with alcohol. If you had an ancestor who, like, they were benevolent and everything was good until they got some alcohol in them, do not offer alcohol to them. That's not energy that you want to attract into your home. And that's the thing. Whatever it is that you venerate in your space, whatever it is that you elevate in your space is going to radiate in your space. So make sure that you are not elevating energies that you don't want to have in your space. Other ways: meditation, journaling, listening to music, dancing, playing their favorite songs, literally whatever you would do for somebody who you care about in the flesh. You can connect any way you would connect with your friends, your family, how you cook dinner, whatever it is that you would do if a person was standing right next to you, do the same thing. Sometimes it can feel a little bit silly at first, like a song comes on and you're dancing in the kitchen, but invite your ancestors to dance with you. It looks as simple as, like, Grandma, I think you might have liked this song. And then just dancing. Grandpa, I know you probably don't want to hear this, but this song, this is my jam. And letting them know, just saying it out loud. And it helps build the connection again, that you know that they're there, even though you're not necessarily, quote unquote, hearing them. The next thing is erecting an altar. In my experience, it's not effective to erect an altar if you don't have a good mental handle on what's happening. That means being afraid or ashamed. You don't want to open up that spiritual space if you're operating out of fear, because other things come and go. It changes the energetic atmosphere because you're operating out of fear while you're trying to connect. My suggestion is just start with wrapping your mind around the idea of talking to your honorable ancestors. Wrap your mind around the idea about what you're about to do. Speak to them out loud without setting up the altar. What that also looks like is, if you have not had any practice with that type of discipline, this is not something that you just put up and you walk away and then you go to it whenever you feel like it. This is going to require you to have some type of system. Are you going to cleanse the altar every Friday, every Sunday? Are you going to be home? Are you somebody who you're going to erect an altar and then you're just going to dip and not be home for 6 weeks? You have to be clear on what you're doing, because this is not something that you just do and leave unattended, or that you only go to when you need something. They're not genies. They're not genies. They're not genies. They are your ancestors. You're not elevating them because you want something. You're elevating them because they deserve it. You're not elevating them because it's going to help you be great. You're elevating them because it's going to elevate your bloodline. Your intentions here need to be pure. This is not about getting everything you want. This is not about manifesting whatever this item is that you see. This is about you elevating your ancestors so that you can heal yourself. You can heal your lineage. If you have children, you can heal your children. And if you're planning on having children, you'll be as healed as you can by that time comes. Anything beyond that is not something that you need to be using as your catalyst for setting up your altar. These are some items that are necessary. Water, the elements: water, air, represented by incense. Earth can be represented by fruits, foods, flowers, crystals, things that are of the earth. And then fire. Whatever that looks like to you, as long as you have those 4 elements. Water, though, is going to be necessary. For my personal altar, I offer libation water, and I also have what I call, or what has been called, or is called, portal water. For that water, I put Florida water in it. It keeps the energy clear. Spirit moves through water. Energy moves through water. It's a catalyst for a lot of spiritual energy when you have water in a space. It helps the flow of energy. It's a conductor. Make sure that you have 2 of them, though, because the first one is going to be the libation. That's what they are being offered as a refreshment. The second one is your portal. Watch it. Do not let it get cloudy. Do not let things fall in it. Do not let things die in it. That goes for everything on the altar. But there are times, depending on what's going on in your spiritual space, that the altar water, the portal water, gets cloudy before other water on the altar. Pay attention. Make sure that you're checking in, even if today's not your scheduled time to tend to it. Make sure that you're looking over everything, you're checking everything, make sure that everything looks okay. And if something looks out of place or something looks different, make sure that you note that if this is your first time. What are you seeing? What are you noticing? What do you think it is? Ask for understanding. It's going to help you understand how your ancestors are communicating with you. Some suggested things, if they're available, don't beat yourself up if they're not. Tobacco, sweets, personal items, things that they just might have liked. Again, if it's a vice that killed them, don't give it to them. So do not give your ancestor who died from lung cancer because they smoked a whole bunch of cigarettes a day more cigarettes. That's not energy that you want to elevate in your home. The same with alcohol. The same with sweets. The setup, basic do's and don'ts. Make sure that your altar has its own safe and sacred space, as close to that as you can get. One question that I get a whole lot is, what if I have to put my altar in my bedroom? That's fine. Just do not have sex in front of it. Do not do anything that you would not do in front of if they were standing in the room, if you wouldn't do it, don't do it. If you have to put a sheet up or a divider or whatever it is, make sure that you are respecting the fact that that space is not where that needs to be happening because they are there with you. Make sure that you dismantle, clean, and re-erect at least once a week. That means taking things down, wiping things down, changing the water. If you're using a 7-day candle, what you can do is use that as the opportunity to take everything down. When the candle goes out, before you light another candle, take everything down, wipe everything down, and then put everything back up. Spend some time connecting at least once a day. Some people may feel called to do it more than once, but once a day. It's not about like putting down some coffee and walking away. It's not about saying, here y'all go, and then walking away. Sit, eat, talk, have conversations, connect. It's not the only place to connect, but it is a way to help you create the connection when you're just getting started. As you start to connect with them differently, they may suggest different things. They may tell you like once a week and then go eat in the living room and we'll go in the living room with you. You never know what it is that your ancestors are expecting of you unless you know. So the best thing to do is start with all the time, start with every day, start with all the things, and then minimize what it is as you start going. But when you get to the place where, or when you start in a place where you're not exactly sure what's going on, and then you're also being neglectful, you're gonna take a long time trying to figure out what's going on. And depending on who your ancestors are, they might be offended, and then you might see all types of stuff start going left. You might see yourself, getting little smacks in the head like, hey, you come here when you ask us for something, but then we don't see you any other time. Nobody wants to be treated like that. Nobody wants to be used in that way. Nobody only wants you knocking on their door when they want something or when you want something. Do not do that to your ancestors. Don't place unrelated items on the altar. So if you're in a room doing something and you're like, let me just put this cup here real quick. No. If you're asking and you have, again, that connection where you're like, oh, I really don't have anywhere to put this cup. It's hot. Can I put it down real quick? Then no, nobody's going to knock the cup off the altar because you're burning your hand and you're trying to put the cup down. But if you're just like, oh, let me do this real quick. Let me sit my cell phone right here because I got to go across the house and do something. Or, especially if it's something that you're smoking or eating or drinking and you're just putting it down on the altar like it's table space. It's not table space. It's a sacred space. Treat it like that. Do not leave cooked fruit or cut fruit on the altar more than 2 or 3 days, depending on the condition. If it's hot as hell where you are, do not leave food on the altar for days. That's not okay. Even if it's cold where you are, no more than 3 days, depending on what it is and what you're giving them. When it comes to whole fruits, I personally leave them there a little bit longer because whole fruits last longer. Do not let anything mold. Do not let anything start stinking. Pay attention because sometimes things mold quicker than others for different reasons. For myself personally, when my ancestors don't like something, it molds. So I may think this will be good for 3 days, but then I go to my altar and the next day I'm like, oh, wow, you guys don't like this, which is another reason why it's important to go to your altar every day, because that's the first place where you learn how they communicate with you. When you're trying to figure out what it is that they like, if you're just putting food down and walking away and then aimlessly throwing food out or aimlessly, getting rid of whatever it is that you have on the altar and you're not observing what it is, what's drying out, what's molding, what has moved, what looks like some of it is gone, what's evaporated. Those are things that you need to pay attention to if you're trying to figure out what they do and do not like. From my personal space, do not eat the food after you take it down. I leave my food out, which is like my practical reason. I'm sure there's different philosophies on that. But for me personally, I'm leaving something up for 2 days. I'm not eating that after I take it down. As far as discarding it, the best practice spiritually is to offer it back to the earth and give it thanks. So if you are somewhere where you do like where you are able to dig a hole or put the food by the tree or whatever it is, if it's somewhere where that's not possible, still give it thanks, but then throw it out. Your ancestors understand that you can't, specifically if you live in places in the city and there's like an apartment complex, where are you going to be putting food by a tree without, you know, breaking any community rules and potentially getting yourself in some trouble. So don't feel bad if you don't have that space, but just make it clear that that is your intention, and make sure that you thank the offering, you thank spirit, you thank your ancestors when you take these things down and you get ready to cleanse. A little tip is small children taking things from or placing things from the altar can be okay. Just ask them why. Going back to that, don't put unrelated items on the altar. To you, a little toy car might be unrelated, but to your child, they're spending time with their grandparent. To you, some candy might be like, why are you putting candy up there? Maybe they like eating a lollipop and then they put a lollipop just up there and it's one that they were eating. Don't flip out, because maybe that's how they know how to share. You know, just like a grandma would be like, oh, you're not gonna share you're not gonna share your lollipop with me. And they might really put their lollipop up there because they are feeling that, they're hearing that, they're seeing that. Always ask them why they did it. If it is something that you notice is just absent-mindedness because they're not used to this and to them it's just a table, then explain that this is not a table where you can just put things. Don't put anything up on this table. Ask me before you put something on this table. But if they're telling you because grandma wanted it or because grandpa wanted it, allow them to have their own interactions with the altars. What I can say is if you're finding that they are very active at your altar, at the altar, because they are smaller and don't typically do the things like, you know, when you're not supposed to have sex in front of your altar and that kind of stuff, they're not doing that because they're children. You can get a candle, a plastic candle, like a fake candle, electric candle, and put some batteries in it and let them set up their own space. Teach them how to set up their own space. Ask them, do they want their own space? Do you want to give grandma and grandpa their own space in your room? Especially if you have children who, once you've connected and you're clear on your own connection, are having like nightmares or things like that, teaching them that their ancestors are going to keep them safe and getting them into the habit of praying to their ancestors or asking for that kind of protection or thanking their ancestors for giving them that kind of protection before they go to sleep at night. Again, it's a best practice to just build. It's just a beautiful thing for children to be able to engage in. So don't feel like you have to, like, you know, do this particular right thing all the time. Like, it has to be this way. Watch your kids too sometimes, because the way they just listen to what they're hearing is something that a lot of adults can learn from. Don't be so closed-minded about what it needs to look like. Allow them to explore it. But the safest way to do that is with that candle light, you know, that electric candle, so that they are able to connect on their own. Some of the examples of items that I mentioned, I said that I put Florida water in my portal. That is the Florida water right here to the far left. I would say research the best place to find these items in your hometown. A 7-day glass candle. That's the type of candle that I use because I leave my altar candle on at all times. For those who are not in the place to do that or are not comfortable with doing that, you can absolutely you know, take a tea light candle or a pillar candle and do your thing until it burns out. Whatever feels safe to you, do that. But these are the 7-day candles. When you hear people say that they are using 7-day candles on their altar, this is what they are referring to. They come in different colors. I suggest white or a pastel color, like a baby blue, like a powder blue or powder pink or something light. Try not to use any aggressive colors like reds, greens, yellow, red, greens, oranges. Those colors bring energies with them, and you want to give your ancestors, you know, light, soft, loving light and elevation. Ancestor money, I didn't actually mention, but I'm going to mention it now. Ancestor money, you may hear some people say that they offer it. It is a matter of, again, choice. It's a matter of what feels right to you. There are some people that absolutely do not use ancestor money for any reason. There are some people who use it all the time. There are people who burn it. There are people who write intentions on it and use it for whatever it is that they want to use it for. But the idea behind it is that you are closing out some energetic debts. You can write your intention, like the debt of whichever ancestor that did not pay their debts is cleared, so that we don't have generational debt. It's very, very useful when you are thinking about your financial state. If you look at a lot of Asian cultures in general, all parts of Asia, think about going into like a nail salon or a Thai restaurant or an Indian restaurant. You always will see some type of altar set up. It doesn't look the way we know it. Sometimes it's like in plain sight and we don't realize it, but those little good luck cats, the Buddhas, the bowls, the dragons, the deities, all of those are their altars. Those are altars that are for their prosperity. And you'll find that you sometimes see ancestor money on that altar for their prosperity. Some people argue that if you're not Asian or Chinese for this particular type of note, that this isn't one that you're supposed to be using. Do what feels right to you. My ancestors don't have a problem with this because the intention is what it is. But do what feels right to you. If it feels like it's something that you don't want to use, then it's something that you don't want to use. This is just great. I'm just happy that you guys were able to make it through this with me. The end. Thank you so much for trusting me with your energy. Sorry, I got caught up. I'm in my altar room and there's things happening. Thank you guys so much for trusting me again with your energy. I know that was short, but it is, again, a supplementary video. This video is going to help if you've seen the first video, but also I have a newsletter, and this is a supplementary idea or a supplementary thing that I have that I feel like is going to help people kind of further their understanding of what they've read in the newsletter. If you're interested in the newsletter, click the link below. It'll take you to where you can sign up and check it out. I'll be back again later on with some more good stuff, hopefully. Thank you again so much for trusting me with your energy, and I hope that you guys have the day that you intend to have.